church where regular teaching and preaching of the Bible hold a primary role and where Scripture's authority is final.
So preaching, you've underlined how important it is, and really I think oftentimes people settle for quite poor preaching. Preachers can settle for quite poor preparation and sometimes preach quite poorly. And sometimes people's expectations of preaching can be very low because of what they've learned to expect week by week. How do you think a preacher can develop and improve as a preacher? What are the kind of things that have helped you to grow as a preacher?
I think for me, probably one of the most helpful things was that when I became a Christian, then I started going to a nearby Baptist church where the preacher was just superb. And so probably one of the best ways to learn preaching is listening to a good preacher. I mean, there are very helpful books on preaching, which obviously I would encourage people to read, like Dr. Lloyd Jones' Preaching and Preachers, and others that can really help you. But I think that listening to good preaching is very formative. And for me, I noticed that the preacher that, again, I think probably helped me more than anybody, in all honesty, over the years, he used to speak to the heart. You knew you were being spoken to. And in my praying before I preach, I'm asking God, Lord, please let people feel that their Father in heaven is speaking to them. Let them feel God is speaking to them. I was so blessed the other day when a lady spoke to me after the meeting. She said, I just felt like God was speaking to me. And I thought, wow, it's just what I prayed this morning. That people will really feel the nearness of God, the sense of God addressing them in their hearts. So not just learning an explanation of some verses, or even very well explained, but they're really hearing God speak to them in their heart. Now that means you've got to be true to the Bible. You've got to give true weight to what the Scripture says and really be thorough, a workman that needs not to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth, as Paul says to Timothy. You have to work at it. And so you want to be clear. I think you need, if you can, to subdivide a sermon. I think just commenting on verses as you go. So I think to have some shape, have some drama, calling for a decision, calling for a response. I think it's one of the things I often have to say, have you done application? I'll write on my notes, apply, because I think I'm not very good at application. I can love truth, I can love setting out truth, but I'm often challenged and inspired by preachers that are really almost aggressive with their application. I think that's a weakness in my own preaching, and I admire when people can do that. Now, it's got to come from exposition first. You don't. It's not all exhortation. Come on, do hard more, try harder.
So would you say that there is a danger that preachers can exhort too much and not teach enough, or teach too much and not exhort enough?
I think getting the balance is hugely important. What you're looking for is response that is rooted in truth. Right. And so I think that exhortation without information is just driving people. Come on, try harder, do this. Oh, do I have to? Yeah, do more. And to me, that isn't really biblical preaching. So there's got to be light and revelation. They see something maybe they've not seen before, as a result of which, hey, there's application. You can do things that are in the light of what you've just learned. And I think bringing people to a decision, even as they sit there. Jonathan Edwards said, preaching is for now. Preaching is not for notebooks and to be put on the shelf to be meditated on later. He said it's an event. Yeah. And at the moment of impact, that is when the thing can happen. And I've always prayed for that, looked for that. I'm looking for something to happen. And so when I'm preparing, I'm trying to think, what's the point of this? What does God want from this? What are we looking for in terms of engagement here? Because we want to change the flock. And the way that people get changed, I think, apart from all the other things, through preaching is engagement. God has suddenly spoken. It can change my life. And so we're looking for something to take place. It's a dynamic event. And sometimes it's comforting. Obviously, it's reassuring people during seasons of heartache, and it's just speaking of God's tenderness, God's mercy. Again, we're looking for engagement. Are they drinking in God's kindness and mercy right now? and so you're wanting to feed them in the midst of their pain and difficulty. So it's by no means merely explaining verses. We're looking for the help of the Spirit.